Hi, I'm Lee Aveling. I'd like to give you a special welcome to Intersections, where faith, ideas, and life meet. Carla.
Today we have two guests. I'd like to introduce them. The first one is to my left, Dr. Barbara Orr. We're so glad you could be here.
Thank you.
She is Associate Professor of Family Medicine and in charge of student education in family medicine. And then to her left is a dear friend and colleague of mine, Dr. Will Alexander, who is Professor of Family Medicine and Emeritus Director of the Center for Spiritual Life and Wholeness. Welcome. Now, we're doing something a little unusual today, Lee, in that we're asking actually Will to do some of the interviewing, Dr. Alexander to do the interviewing of Dr. Orr.
Well, that's what Dr. Alexander does best.
Yes.
I mean, that's what he's renowned for, is interviewing people.
He's known on our campus and all over the world for, you're known for your interviewing skills and techniques. So, well, and mostly because you get at the story. So we're very happy to have you. Yeah.
You were Barbara Lowry, and you were in a nice, beautiful swimsuit, and you were about to dive in for a race in Washington, D.C. That's the first time I saw you.
Well, that's one of my claims to fame. I won a bronze medal in swimming in my youth, AAU. So you saw me at one of my best periods.
Next time I saw you, you were a physician in the ER at Loma Linda Medical Center. And we saw patients every day for almost a year. And then our ways parted a little while, and then you went to family medicine. And I went elsewhere and then came over to family medicine. And one day you said to me, I'm going to have to go to the hospital. I probably have cancer. Back up from that a little bit. When were you first aware that things weren't as well there as they should be?
Well, I was having a little bit of bleeding, and as a physician, you know, oh, well, I better get this done. So I got an ultrasound and didn't show much, and I said, well, kept going on, and I said, well, I better get a endometrial biopsy. So I went to one of my colleagues and I said, can you do an endometrial biopsy on me? Well, she tried and she couldn't get in. She said, you're too tight, I can't get the pipelle in. So then I called my colleague up and I said, do you think you could? He said, yeah, I had these fine little instruments I can get in. So when I went to see him, he could barely get in, and he took a ultrasound in his office and he said, well, it looks like a polyp. I said, oh, okay, just a polyp. Wasn't too worried about it. And then he said, well, we got to scrape it out. And then when he scraped it out, he called me about a week later.
Well, the time between the test and when he finally said, this is what we found, do you remember your thoughts?
Actually, I was kind of deluded that,
Polyp?
not much. Yeah, just polyp.
Was that a kind of a denial on your part?
No, I honestly, the ultrasound didn't show anything. And I didn't have much bleeding, so therefore I was kind of lulled into not thinking it was much.
No reason why you should have cervical cancer.
It was endometrial cancer.
I mean endometrial.
Yeah. I didn't think so, although when I look back, my brother died of cancer. I had a grandpa that died of cancer. And my sister had twin sister had some abnormal cells. So if I put it together, I thought, oh yeah, I do have it in my family.
So the day came when he told you the news. Remember how he told you?
Over the phone.
How do you like that?
I didn't mind that because he knows me, and he's a classmate. And
What if you'd fainted dead away? It's happened, you know.
I think he knew that I wanted to know fairly soon, so he
So he used the words?
Yes, the C word.
And you hung up, and then?
I happened to be in a restaurant with my husband.
Your cell phone.
And on the cell phone.
Oh, you got cancer.
No, but he did it very dignified. And he kind of broke the news. And I was stunned, I have to admit. I go, wow.
Who were you with?
I was with my husband and what we call the philosophers. And they're an intellectual group of friends we meet every Friday. And I didn't say anything to anybody at first.
Because? You wanted to process it?
Yeah. You know, there's a doctor part of me and there's a human patient part of me. And I was going to be the doctor part of me.
That kicked in first.
Yeah, that kicked in first. I need to know the staging, I need to know the cell type, I need to know the extent of disease before I get too nervous.
No sense of I'm dying. I've got
No,
cancer.
well, I think the C word always makes you think cancer, cancer.
Yeah, that's got to be
Yeah,
scary.
it is scary.
Very
Now,
scary.
doctors are not supposed to get sick, Dr.
I know,
Orr.
that's what my patients tell me. Every time
Yeah.
they're sick and they say, well, you don't get sick. I said, no, I don't get sick.
Oh, so you thought that of yourself as well?
Yeah,
Yeah.
to some extent, yes.
To
Yeah.
now from being a mama, a physician, a beautiful lady, you now become a patient. What was that role like just almost immediately?
I think I'm a pretty good patient.
Who told you that?
Well, you know, I tend to not complain. I don't put a lot of stress on the nurses. I try to do things for myself. You know, so I try to, you know, I try to think of myself as a patient, if I were a patient, and how would it best help the people around me.
Did the doctor say immediately, this is what we found and this is what we're going to do, or he just said, come see me when you have time?
Oh, no, the doctor, my classmate doctor, friend, said, I'll make the arrangements to the other doctor, the
For?
for possible surgery
Okay.
and that type of thing.
And then surgery was recommended. And there was a morning there about 5 in the morning when we all kind of showed up to see you off.
This gentleman got up at 5 before my surgery to come and hold my hand and say prayer. And that meant a lot to me. My husband also was there.
So you're lying there and they're about to wheel you in. Had you been under anesthesia before?
Oh, yeah.
So this wasn't scary.
I didn't like anesthesia.
Because
it leaves you with a feeling that you just had the flu. So I said, oh, no, I hope I don't feel that way again.
I'm just curious, before going into surgery, did you have some of the fears that many people have going into surgery?
Yeah. Wondering if you're going to wake up.
Right.
I think everybody does to some extent, but
You're out of control.
yeah, you're in their hands, and
The last thing you see is the anesthesiologist, right? Wheeling you in and then...
it was a nurse. I don't remember the anesthesiologist.
Oh,
If you had asked me who the anesthesiologist, I wouldn't know.
Did the nurse say anything?
I don't remember.
No.
No, because they give you
They'd already given
Superset
her,
or
yeah.
something to help you forget, so
Right.
I don't remember.
So you woke up in recovery, not knowing what all they did.
It was I got a phone call from somebody, and it was the most unusual phone call. It was actually from my husband's ex-wife. And I always thought I was public enemy number 1 of her. And she said, how are you doing?
Wow.
And that shocked me. It shocked me that she felt enough to call me.
Wow.
Man.
Yeah, that was quite unusual.
First thoughts when you woke up,
Well, I got through it okay.
I'm alive.
I'm alive, yeah.
And the report came later?
Yeah, I didn't. I think the real issue is after surgery, was there spread to the lymph nodes? And they'll say, well, we didn't see any, but they don't know until they slice through the different
Yes.
parts of the body that they take out. And they take out quite extensive lymph nodes.
Did you
So
ever,
I knew that.
Did you ever wish during that you weren't a doctor and you could just be a lay person
No.
you wanted and all?
Oh, yeah. I think the more, I'm the type of person, the more information then I can make a rational
Yeah.
and objective decision.
At any time during that, you think this thing might take my life?
Not right away, you know.
I mean, but-
yeah, oh, sure.
Eventually.
Eventually.
You know what? I want to jump in here for a moment. Here you are a doctor under doctor's orders in bed. What's that like?
I kind of enjoyed it. Did you?
She told you she's a good patient.
I'm a good patient.
Yeah.
And you know, and the patients were- and the nurses are very attentive.
Yeah.
And you know, I took advantage of the relaxation. I actually enjoyed it.
Because you're so busy all the time.
Yeah.
So it's-
See, the word is kind of now out. Barbara had surgery. Dr. Orr had surgery. She won't be at work for a while. So many of these people get so curious, they want to look at your record. You know, they've been doing this with the political people.
Well, you know,
What was it?
I knew about HIPAA, and I said I wanted to. I actually told my staff if patients call, just tell them Dr. Orr has cancer,
Oh.
and tell them that she is going to have surgery and possible radiation, and she'll be back as soon as she can. That's what I told him.
Now, I'm curious about that because for many patients, doctors are invincible. What caused you to want to tell your patients?
Because, you know, patients oftentimes think when you're gone that you're out at some exotic foreign vacation doing, you know, neglecting their medical things. And I knew that patients really want to know. And my staff would kind of, if they were saying, oh, we're not going to say, you know, and so patients are wondering, especially if you're out for 6 weeks.
Yeah.
Because I've never been out that long in 28 years that I've been there.
Wow.
Tell me how you told your husband what you heard on the phone.
I didn't say anything at first.
And later you had to kind of...
Well, as he was kind of animated talking to these philosophers and taking center stage, and I was kind of trying to cloister myself in my own thoughts of how am I going to cope with this, and what are the next moves that I need to make. So what I did, just as he was leaving, I said, the biopsy said I had cancer. Oh. And I said...
You whispered it.
Yeah, I whispered.
As to your husband?
To my husband.
As he was leaving?
As he was leaving the restaurant. So I said, I don't want to talk about it now. I'll see you at lunch. Because I had obligations to teach and to test students that day. So I met him at lunch.
So at lunch, who broke the silence?
I actually just took his hand, and we both were sitting there with tears coming down our eyes.
Of course.
And I didn't have to say anything. He didn't have to say anything. I mean, we'd been married 28 years, and you have a melting of the mind.
Yeah.
You have the, I knew, and my husband tends to be humorous, and you know, and sometimes he'll say, well, but he didn't have any humor. But I knew he knew how I felt, and it was more like when you find somebody that you blend so well with, like my husband and I have that relationship, and you don't have to say much. He knew how I felt, and I knew how he felt.
Did he change in the way he behaved toward you?
No.
He was always the same solid.
Yeah, he's always been my friend and my emotional support.
So now we're in...
my person that I can reveal my secret
I
feelings
just
and
wanted
emotions.
so to look into his face and see that there was no more humor.
No.
How was that?
Well, you know, he's steel in his soft way. He's a strong person, and I knew he'd be there for me.
Yeah.
So, you know, that was, you know, that's comforting to know that that you don't have to worry about that. And he would also be humorous in spite of the diagnosis.
So now we're at radiation time.
Well, you know, let me tell you how I handle when bad news, and I've had bad news. My father was killed when I was 18, and I handle bad news by dissipating it with other people that are meaningful to me. And the person who probably understands me the most is my twin sister. So I called my twin sister up and said, Bev, the biopsy said I got cancer. And she said, Barb, the C word does not mean coffin. And it was funny, that little phrase, the C word does not mean coffin. You know, it was funny because that was kind of comforting.
And that was quick to think of, right? Yeah.
Well, see, she's a physician as well. And so when a patient comes in and she's talking to them about their cancer, she uses that little phrase. And I could see that little phrase was, you know, you're not going to die right away. You know, it may be
But does all that rob you of being existentially human and really feeling stuff? If you keep putting it off with good husbands and good sisters and good programs and good...
No, but that's how, I think, at least I find that I can handle things when other people are emotionally sharing that experience.
But is it a matter of handling, like one friend called the other, he said, I have cancer, and the other one said, how exciting. You know, that here's something happening to your life and your body, which is very significant. So I think physicians and all others, when this happens, they tend to move away from it in different ways.
I didn't feel the people closest to me were moving away from it.
No, but yourself, so that you couldn't really appreciate I might die.
I would feel more that way if I felt there were lymph nodes involvements and I had to have
See,
chemotherapy.
but you're very professional now.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
It's the
Well, that
doctor.
helps me cope better.
And if you weren't a doctor,
The knowledge that I have, my knowledge helped me be less frightened by the outcome.
this is way off in another direction now. You expose your life to all these people and your body. What does that do to one's kind of sense of?
It didn't bother me. No, that was.
Is that 'cause
that
you're
was
a
the least
doctor
of
or a
my
woman?
worry. Pardon?
Because you're a doctor or a woman?
I think it's the type of woman I am.
Oh.
You know, there's certain things that your modesty and your exposure, and I'm not one that worries so much about that.
The thing you needed then to deal with from the radiation on was what it did to your body was fatiguing, wasn't it?
Oh, radiation! I didn't realize you have 5 weeks of radiation, and I thought, oh, I'll still work. So here I was at work, you know, trying to do all the things I normally do, teach students, and I see patients 2 days a week, and they're long days. Sometimes you're putting in 10, 12-hour days, and third week into the radiation, and I went to the resident saw me, and I said, I was hoping he'd say, you shouldn't work. But he didn't. Because see, I look at my patients and I say, I don't want you going to work.
Yeah.
And I guide them.
Yes.
And I say, you should not go to work because you're not capable of working right now.
Yeah.
And I know when they are, and we talk about it. He didn't. And I'm the one I'm going to plug right through my work.
Yeah.
If I'm dying nearly, I'm going to do it.
How long did that last?
Well, by the third week, I couldn't get out of bed.
Yeah.
And he did say something to me that I appreciate. He said, you know, your body is being destroyed to some extent. Your tissues are being damaged by radiation. And he says, I want you to you got to rest. But he didn't give me time off. I needed time. So I finally said, I called my work and I said, I'm in bed and I can't get out of bed, and all I want is to eat is popsicles because I can't. I'm nauseated and I'm not handling this well.
No,
So.
you kind of thought you were beyond it now, the radiation, we're getting this thing, I'll go back to work. And then what happened?
Well, you know, you're still weak for about 3 weeks after radiation.
But there was something else, something they were looking for in the margins, or?
Well, you always want to know, you don't know that whether it's spread to the lymph
Yeah.
nodes until after all the biopsy.
And did
So
you
I
have
had to
to
wait
have-
2 or 3 weeks
Yeah.
for that.
What was
And
that like?
that's worrisome. Because I knew then you have to add another layer of treatment, which is chemotherapy. And then you lose your hair, and then it's much rougher on you.
You lost your hair?
No, I didn't have to have chemo.
Oh, I
because
see, yeah.
The staging was such
Yeah.
that
That is pretty dramatic when
yeah.
it happens.
I think the chemo is one I really thought, oh.
But still, it's also dramatic when the fighter has to stay
Lay
in
down.
bed, has to lay down. So you encountered a part of yourself that you haven't seen very often.
No, I mean, I've been working 28 years, and I think I missed like 5 days of work.
Exactly.
Because even when sometimes I'm sick, and I just take some antibiotics, and I've had a spleen out, so I knew that I'm very careful on my health, and that's why you think, oh, you know, I stay healthy, I exercise, I eat the right foods, I get my sleep, I think good thoughts, I pray, and do all the right things, and then you get something like cancer, and then, you begin to reassess.
That make you a little mad that I've lived this beautiful, clean life and I've got cancer?
No.
Some do. They just feel,
Oh yeah.
I've been robbed.
Oh, so reassessing doesn't mean you begin to question why me? Or?
Oh no.
Oh.
No.
Okay.
Well, some people even go further, as Will's saying. It's like, I've done all this stuff, I should have lived it up. Whatever that means, but I mean, there's
I'm living
feelings.
it up though.
So what did
See,
it-
I always felt like I'm living it up.
What does reassessed mean? What did you mean that you reassessed?
I think what you see, you don't think you're, in a way, it's like the teenager doesn't think they're very vulnerable.
Yeah.
Well, the doctor, as again, my patients kept telling me, doctors don't get sick.
Yeah.
And so I try to do the right thing so I don't get sick. And so you believe that message to some
Yeah.
extent. And so oh yeah, I did
doctor
get
does
cancer.
get
yeah, or
sick.
I didn't think, I think I'm going to die from a stroke because I have high blood pressure more than I did cancer. I just didn't think cancer was, but then as I look at my genetics, I do have more than I recognize.
But you moved through this thing like a real pro, like a real good patient, like a dutiful daughter. Where was the black moment or two? You didn't get through this.
I had the black moment was the first week or so. And I go, wow, this is, I'm feeling glum about it. And I'm not a glum person, I'm kind of optimistic. And this was a kind of an eye-opener to me. I come into my academic office, and one of the ladies there just came and gave me a big hug. And it was a very warm, affectionate hug. And then I go back to my desk, and there on the desk was the flowers. See little 4 roses with baby breath. And nestled underneath was a little note, and the note said, "You are so much appreciated here." And it was just their expression of what I meant to them, the ladies in the office. Then I go over to my clinical office, and there was a big bouquet of flowers from my student. And it was like, wow, that was a moment that, you know, people do value you. And that kind of turned me around, you know, mentally and emotionally. And ever since then, I've been optimistic.
Right.
And then in the outpouring of affection from patients, I mean, a couple patients, they each of them sent me 5 cards, each along the way. And then a lot of other cards and flowers and calls. And sometimes I give my phone number out to many of my patients. And they would just say, "I don't want to bother you, but I just want to let you know we're praying for you." And they leave a little message on my phone.
Wow, the patient taking care of the doctor.
Yeah, and they nurtured me. And, you know, I tell students, I said, so much about medicine, and you got to capture this part of medicine. It's you nurture them, but in turn, they start to nurture you. And I can have patients say, "Dr. Orr, sit down right here. You're going to get the message you gave me. Balance your life." And maybe I look tired.
Your patient's telling you
that? Your patient's telling me that, you know.
You need to go home and get rest.
Yeah, that's why they said, take care of yourself. But it's that, I think that the key sustains somebody is when you begin to see that patients, the love that you extended to them, it comes back to you in many, many ways.
You think that was a part of your healing?
Oh, very much so, yeah.
And just those words changed the catecholamine.
I mean, so many people say, "I'm praying for you." And then just last week, I walked into the room and the lady says, "I got to give you a hug." So I don't even remember who she was. I saw her once, maybe a year ago.
You're huggable.
And she said, "I just had to give you a hug. And it's nice to have you back."
You just said something very interesting. You said you're huggable. There's something about going through illness that does make you vulnerable, doesn't it? Huggable in a sense, yeah. Your patients.
Well, I hug my patients, particularly.
Oh, you do on a regular
yeah.
basis. Oh, okay.
Especially some of my patients don't get a hug. I may be the only one
Older
who gets a
patients.
hug.
Yeah.
And I once had a patient at the VA said, "Dr. Orr, you need to learn how to hug."
That was your
She told
assignment?
me that. Yeah, she said.
Were you a resident then, or?
No, I was actually. It was early in my training, in the 70s.
So you learned.
Later 70s. I was there at 78 to 80.
In your entire existence, have you ever given much thought to dying and death?
Some, yeah. I nearly died when I was 17. Got kicked by a horse and ruptured my spleen, and nearly died then.
Because I want to know, physicians are around dying and death every day, and we're all dying. And yet they have to maintain this beautiful front. But until I think they've looked at their own mortality. I used to give students a death certificate with their own name on it.
Did you really? How did they respond
They
to
didn't
that?
like that.
You know, we're almost out of time. I'm wondering, there could be one of our viewers has just found out the C word. What would you say to them? What suggestion?
You know, I think
It's
that
not coffin.
you live your life so that you don't have a lot of fragmented pieces. You don't have anger toward people.
Right.
You, if you do, you say, why? And how can I not? Because you want to live, each day is a miracle.
Yeah.
And you take that day and you say, do I have hurt feelings? Do I need to apologize to somebody because I have unfinished business?
Yeah.
And if I can encourage, so they don't, if I die tomorrow, I will be ready to die.
Okay.
So you don't wait until you hear the C word
That's
before
right.
you start
No,
taking care of matters.
That you
Yeah.
don't have a lot of baggage that you need to correct.
And even though you have the C word, and they know that it's probably going to happen, that time that they have is so precious.
Yeah.
To spend it just wallowing in it.
Well, and could we say the same thing about faith? If you wait
Yeah.
till you hear the C word to have some sort of connection,
Yeah.
it's very difficult.
That's right.
Yeah.
And so your life is lived so that if tomorrow it was gone,
Yeah.
you wouldn't have regrets. My daughter really wrote something nice. She said, when I was 60, she had a birthday party at the Mission Inn, and she wrote this piece called "A Life Well Lived," and that was so meaningful to me. And my husband said, and we had my best friends around a table, and they were saying things about me. I said, "Wow, it's nice to hear things that should be done at your funeral while you're alive." You know?
Yes.
I said, "Now I can die," you know, and I was joking about it. But
Yeah.
you know, if you can live your life so that, and those people who have cancer, they will say, you know, I will make it so my life is such that I don't have any unfinished business.
Yeah.
My, what a story.
Thank you for opening your life, sharing.
Yeah.
Thank you.
It's beautiful.
Yes. It's very powerful to listen to. It's, so often we tend to look in the future for living then and not in the present. So thank you.
It's
And-
intersection.
Yes.
And if you just found out yourself that you're going through a real trial, medical trial, take heart, because as you've just heard from Dr. Will Alexander and Dr. Barbara Orr, there are ways to cope. And you talked about just keep going, right?
Well, and if you haven't, today is a day to make amends with family and loved ones and the people who are important to you.
We are out of time. You've been watching Intersections.